Hi everyone. I've been messing with the Starfield ship builder quite a bit, and this is my ultimate combat ship that I've been using for most of my battle encounters. It has a ton of firepower, it has a bunch of shield, and it also has maximum maneuverability. As a bonus, it can jump to any star system that exists. In fact, this exact version here is able to jump 30 light years, which is the furthest that any ship can jump. So I'm going to show you how this thing was made, so you can build your own if you want. I started with this enhanced cockpit from Teo. Offers 260 cargo. There are other similar versions that offer slightly less cargo, but since this thing has no cargo holds, I went with this version. Behind it, I have a Teo control station. This increases the cruise count by 4, bringing the total to 6. Directly beneath that, I have a Teo all-in-one. Now this particular piece has beds in it. That's why I chose it. So you can use the bed to restore your health for free. It also has 2 passenger slots. Although if you're not interested in having beds, there are other choices. You can have an armory, captain's quarters. There's even some crafting station if you desire. Although the all-in-one does have a cooking area. You get a bed, you get a cooking area, and you get 2 passengers. That's why I went with this one. I added this landing bay. You can flip it around. I mounted it facing forward. It's also from Teo. And the landing bay has attachment points, which I use to attach these pinpoint landing gear from Teo. There are multiple versions of this landing gear. In the front, of course, I use the front version. For fuel, I installed this H30 Atlas helium tank. This stores 400 fuel, and that's enough to get pretty much across the galaxy in a single hop. There are some particular from one edge to another jumps where you might need to stop once, but this is a rather large fuel tank, so it usually is quite convenient. Usually you don't need to stop. On the opposite side, I installed this 28T Defender shield generator. Now this ship is Class C, so you can use any shield generator you want. And there is one other choice that maybe is worth considering, and that would be this Assurance SG-1800. Now this offers slightly more max shield health than the one I'm using. You can get 1600 as opposed to 1500. However, this shield only has 5% regen rate, and it also has a mass of 160. Whereas this shield has 7% regen rate and a mass of 90. So I think this 28T Defender shield generator is actually probably the best choice, especially since this ship is fast enough that you may be able to disengage from combat for long enough to let your shields regenerate. The 7% regen rate, even if you account for the fact that it's regenerating only to 1500 as opposed to 1600, you actually are getting faster regen. And you also save a lot of weight. So that was why I went with the 28T. I needed some weapon mounts, so I used Nova wings, which I attached to the control station. I also needed engine mounts, so I used these Stroud engine bracers, which are attached to the back of the control station. Now, I needed some landing gear to kind of complete the look, and also you need landing gear. But unfortunately, the Teo landing gear don't fit here, despite the fact that it really looks like they should. Now you could glitch those into place, but fortunately, you don't need to do that, because these Hope 6 landing gear actually look really nice. They have 2 thrusters, and they also offer 2 lander thrusts, whereas this only offers 1. So I think it looks really nice and kind of balances out the look and keeps it aesthetically pleasing even when it's taking off or landing. It looks like it has the thrust it would need, so I went with these landing gear. They offer a good visual continuity as well. They line up pretty well. I also needed to install a docker. So there's this top docker, slim docker, which you can actually flip, install on the bottom of your ship if you so desire. So this way you're not using up any valuable space that could otherwise be taken by weapons. I stole this ship originally from Spacers. It was a Spacer Hyena 3, and it came with this SF-40 sheared flow reactor. However, if you really want to maximize your ship, you'll see that this Pinch 8Z doesn't offer any more power, but it does offer a little more reactor health, a little more hull, and a little bit faster repair rate. In exchange, it is a little bit heavier, but as you'll see, it's still not so heavy that it impairs our mobility. We're still at maximum mobility of 100. So this is the reactor that I'll be using in this final version of the ship. Now I'm going to show you a quick hint here. You can actually clone a color if you want to by making it change the brightness and changing it back. And then when you go to paint, you'll see it on your recent colors list. So you can paint it to match quite easily. Alright, the downside of this reactor, as well as the one I had previously installed, is there's no top mounting point. So in order to install our grav drive, we're going to use this Nova cowling, which has a rear mounting point, which can attach to the front mounting point on this grav drive. Now this is the Aurora 13G grav drive. This has 33 grav jump thrust, which means you're going to get the absolute maximum jump range of 30 light years. I'll point out that there is actually not any system that requires a 30 light year jump. The furthest you need is actually 27 point something. So you can get your jump range up to 28, you'll be able to get anywhere you want to get. Onto the engines. I use these Ares DT60 engines. This is the top tier version of this Ares engine. It offers a decent balance between engine thrust, maneuvering thrust, and health. There is actually an experimental engine which will allow you to go faster, but it has really poor engine health. So, using 4 of these. The reactor has mounting points which allow us to attach the landing gear. And these are the Teo landing gear, the aft version. These have a nice little rocket booster on the back, kind of completes the look of the ship. I also added a few structural parts that don't really do anything. So if you look at the reactor, it kind of looks like it has a bunch of braces, but they're not really bracing anything. So you can snap these weapon mounts into place, and that way it makes it looks like the bracers are kind of holding the engine. Again, this is totally optional, but it only weighs 1. It doesn't weigh enough to compromise your mobility, so I figured I would add them just for looks. I have one of those on each side. And then finally, I added this Hope Tech nose, which you can flip around. This is the one that's rounded on both sides. And I added that to serve as kind of like a bumper for the grav drive. Again, that's just visual, it doesn't really do anything. I did want to add some weapon mounts, so on top I have this Demos spine, spine C, which you can flip it around. I flipped it to the aft version because I think it looks better holding weapons that way. I also use this equipment plate, which allows me to mount a weapon on top of the hull here. So that's the hull of the ship. Now I'm going to go through my weapons. First, I have this PBO 175 auto helium beam. Now this consumes 3 power, which means you can install 4 of them. I attached 2 to the forward landing gear, and I attached 2 to the wings. Now these wings actually don't allow you to mount every single type of weapon. Some will fit, some won't. The rocket launchers are too large, although you can actually sometimes get around that by using the upgrade ship dialog to switch your weapons out. It doesn't seem to check for collisions. But I didn't need to do any glitching for this ship because it's really good as it is. So, I have 4 PBO 175 auto helium beams. This is the best weapon in the game for DPS. It doesn't require a lock, and one thing that you may not know about auto weapons is they kind of have an internal battery. You're going to get a large amount of shots before the weapon charge actually takes place. Whereas if you use a non-auto weapon, as soon as you fire, it's going to charge based on how much power is set to the weapon. As you can see with 4 of these, they can consume up to 12 power. The reactor produces 40 power, but our equipment can consume up to 56. So that means we won't be able to run all our weapons at full power. So if we run these at maybe 3/4 power or half power, or even only 1 pip of power, you'll actually notice that you'll get a significant amount of shots before the recharge even comes into play. A lot of times it's enough to destroy an entire ship before you even have to worry about recharging. So there's 4 of these. Again, this is the absolute best weapon in the game in my opinion. Particle beams are so good, I decided to use multiple of them. So my secondary weapon is also a particle beam. These are the Exterminator 95 MEVs. These are the 3rd best particle beam in the game. So I have the absolute number 1 and the 3rd best here. Now the reason I'm not using the 2nd best right now is there's a particular faction you have to join in order to get the 2nd best particle beam. However, the 2nd best and the 3rd best are kind of comparable. The 2nd best one offers about 12% more DPS, although this does more in a single hit and offers more range. So those are both kind of pros in the side of this one. So really, this isn't far behind the 2nd best weapon. And again, both of the weapons I'm talking about are auto particle beams, which means they store a large amount of internal shots before the recharge actually takes place. So you don't have to run them at full power to get full DPS, at least temporarily. And you'll find that they may be able to charge while you're switching from, you destroy one target and now you're trying to acquire the next. They can charge during that time. Whereas if you use non-auto weapons, you're probably going to fire, the target will still be there, and then the charge will take place. So you'll be leaving a little bit of DPS on the table if you're using non-auto weapons in a lot of cases. Alright, on to the final weapon. Now, this ship was a stolen spacer ship. It was a Spacer Hyena 3. It came with that Sheared Flow 40 reactor, and it also came with a couple missile launchers. It came with 2 of these Tsukaisu 50K missile launchers. Now this is actually a lot better of a missile launcher than it may look in the stats. If you look at the stats, you may be tempted to think the Atlatl 280C is just the king of missile launchers. However, much like with the autocannons versus regular cannons and auto particle beams versus regular particle beams, there is difference in how many shots missile launchers have, although it's even less obvious with the missile launchers. This missile launcher stores 6 shots before it needs to charge. So even if you ran it at 1 power setting, even if you have 3 of them and that requires up to 12, you'll actually get 6 shots before the recharge becomes relevant. Whereas the Atlatl 280C only gets 2 shots. So, in practice, you'll find that this actually might do more damage more quickly than the Atlatl 280C, which the Atlatl 280C does do more damage on paper. Now there is another weapon. There's another weapon that is quite good as far as missile launchers go, and that's this CE39. It's actually quite comparable to this 50K. The difference is it only takes 3 max power instead of 4. So you actually find that if you were to install 4 of these missile launchers on the ship, you would get about 2% more damage. And there is room to do that, like the Kaizus, and you can install them. You can't install them here, but there is just enough room to install the 4th launcher here. So if you want to build this build and use 4 of these CE39s instead of 3 of these Tsukaisu 50Ks, you will actually gain 2% DPS. The only thing you'll be giving up is a little bit of range, and in practice, the range is often irrelevant because it's basically impossible to get a lock at that distance anyways. The reason I'm not using these CE39s is I'm going to do an upgrade to my particle beams, and again, it's only a 2% difference in damage, so I didn't figure it was worth it to upgrade them, because this one slot here, as you see, there's only 3 weapon slots available. I'm going to be upgrading my particle beams later on. I'm going to need these 3 slots. So right here, you have basically the best build of this ship you can make without joining a particular faction and getting a particular weapon. So, I actually have been using this ship. I was able to solo the entire faction of Spacers. So I'm going to show you that video, and this you can see how effective this ship really is.
Grav drive spinning down. Assistance green.
Alright, if you really want to max this ship out though, there is one weapon that you can replace these Exterminator 95s with. And again, the difference between these weapons is rather small, so I don't necessarily recommend you join a faction just to get access to this weapon. However, you will see that this Vanguard Obliterator Autoprojector only takes 2 max power, whereas this Exterminator takes 4. Which means you can actually have 2 of these in place of a single Exterminator if you have enough places to mount them. Which is why I am using these missile launchers instead of the CE-39s. I'm going to need these 3 remaining slots. So if you look, the damage to these 2 of these combined almost adds up to the damage produced by one of these. But the advantage is you're going to have a significantly faster fire rate of 6.65 compared to 5. So when you actually calculate the DPS, it's about 12% more DPS when using these. And again, both of these weapons are automatic particle weapons, so they both will store a large amount of shots, which means you can run them at a less than full power setting and still get maximum DPS for at least a period of time. And again, that time is usually enough to do a lot of damage to ships, destroy several even. So I'm going to show you this final upgrade, and we'll be leaving very little on the table with this ship. So, first we'll install these in the same slots we had previously mounted the other weapons. We can install one more here, but unfortunately these ones won't fit due to the grav drive. Now, there's a way to get around it. You could remove all these. You could put a temporary weapon that's smaller. There are weapons that will fit there. You can just use a very cheap pulse laser. And then you can go to upgrade dialog. If you remove all these, you can put these 2 here. And you could upgrade these 2 to this weapon, and then the game won't check that they don't fit. But again, we don't need to glitch this ship because there are other options. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change grav drives. I'm here at Neon, where Slayton Aerospace has a large presence. So I'm able to get this SGD 2300, which I'm going to paint to match. Now, this offers slightly less grav jump thrust, also has a little bit less health. But, as you can see, it still offers us a 28 light year jump range, which is enough to get anywhere. So we can still get to any system with this build, and it allows us to mount these Obliterator autocannons without colliding, just because it's a slightly more compact grav drive. So here we can do our last thing and assign the weapons. And you will see that we have maxed out our weapons capacity on this ship. More power isn't necessarily better. I mean, it's better that this weapon only consumes 2 because it allows you to mount so many. But it is good to mount as many as you possibly can, especially with these auto projector type of weapons, because their internal battery lets you kind of build up a bank of shots while you're outside of combat, or when you're switching targets even. So here we are. This is the absolute maximized version of the ship. I changed the reactor, I changed the grav drive, and I changed the weapons. I think this is the final version of this ship for me. Get around to decorating that interior finally.
Captain Allen, greetings.
Always a satisfying moment. I have things
Hi there, Captain.
I wish to discuss. Got something for me?
Dusty!
When you have time.
Dusty! Dusty!
I'm here for you, should you need me.
Of course, we got the whole crew here. We got our kitchen, where you can cook.
Lost in my thoughts, but glad to be back.
Got a couple bunk beds for restoring that health. Then there's the docker. You're in space, which I'm not. And then the ladder to the floor where all the space fights, all the relevant command stations. Got spots for our crew here. And of course, the best seat in the whole place. Great visibility out this window. It's the real reason I love the Teo cockpit. It looks awesome from the inside.
We are cleared for liftoff.
So I'm gonna fight the Crimson Fleet again to show this thing in action. But unfortunately, it'll probably be a much smaller group of enemies than it was before.
Jump complete. Want to do it again just for fun?